Okay, so today's topic is Resident Evil 2. There are many, many ways you can play Resident Evil 2, as you can see. Obviously, I've got it hooked up to both. But I thought we'd just go through different ways you can play it. Obviously, digitally as well, emulation. Um, and obviously, the most accessible way to play it. Now, first up, let's hit to a new game. Go normal. And I thought we'd just show. So there are numerous ways to play this particular game. They're all fantastic in their own ways. Original, and of course the remake that came out in 2019. But I have a soft spot for Resident Evil 2 original, if I'm honest. Although I do adore the remake as well. And my time spent. My whole my whole Twitter channel is kind of dominate with Resident Evil. So first up, probably, the easiest way you can play Resident Evil 2, honestly, is if on PS3. And I suppose that's not the easiest, but it's to go on the PlayStation 3 store and just buy the Super Bundle collection that has everything from Resident Evil 1 Director's Cut, and that goes all the way up to Resident Evil 6. That includes some of the more obscure ones. The only ones it doesn't include are sort of your Outbreak on PS2. There's Dead Aim. I think there's a couple of other ones, but it comes with not quite all of them, but nearly all of them. In fact, if I get the chance, I'll actually show it off on because I'm running on the PS2 at the moment. But first one up is obviously the original. Now this is the platinum version. Now I really, really would love to get a black label edition of this, but the black label editions are about the ones I've seen are about £70, and oh yeah, it's in the system. So I've shown this off before, but it's about £34. Platinum versions are quite ways to go by. To be honest, they're usually cheaper than the black label editions, and it's just basic. You get a disc with artwork on the discs. That's pretty much the only difference as far as I understand looking at it. That always happens on this, and the case is in pretty good condition. But yeah, this is how can we put this? I still prefer the original version as much as I adore the remake. Just, a lot is going to be nostalgia, particularly given my age now. But obviously, the most accessible way is probably to play the remake. But there is something about the original that you just don't get with the remake. This has got the zapping system, so there's more going on between the characters, so you can switch between Leon and Claire. So if you don't pick something up in the playthrough as Leon, then you can use that as in Claire's scenario. Where for some reason they just got rid of that in the remake version. There are some criticisms you could say of the remake in particular that I really, really don't like. I generally like the games. I think Resident Evil 3 though was a very, very weak game. Still good, but very, very disappointing. Particularly in comparison to Remake 2, which was, barring the lack of a zapping system and stuff, the game was generally very, very good and very, very compelling to play through. Obviously, you're Mr. X, which is ironic because Mr. X is a bit of a he's a bit of a weakling in Resident Evil 2. He's just very much in the way, and he gets in the way a lot. But he's not that scary, to be honest, in the original game. Oh dear, my game seems to be playing up. Oh dear, that's not good. It seems to be he's just not much of a challenge in comparison to the remake. But Nemesis in RE3 in comparison is a real challenge and a nightmare to contend with in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis on any version you play of the original game. Whereas for some reason they degraded him in the remake for Resident Evil 3. He's not very good at all. It's like they took the Nemesis from Resident Evil 3 on the PS1 and just adopted that into the remake for Resident Evil 2, but didn't do it for the original game it was based on. So that's kind of weird. It's a decent game, but it's very, very disappointing in comparison to Remake 2. For me, this is the best. This is probably the most Well, the remake's the most accessible way to play for modern gamers, of course. Obviously, you can get it digitally on PS3. In fact, no. In fact, I completely forgot that the games 1, 2, and 3 are available on PS5 now. I think they've been available for a few months. The RE1 version is the director's cut, which is it looks cool. I think it's supposed to have uncut cutscenes, but I don't believe it does. I think that's the or is that the Dual Shock edition? They messed something up with the cutscenes in RE1 where they said it was uncut and it actually wasn't. But you can see it on YouTube. It's all over the place. Definitely, I would say that's going to be the easiest way to play on PSN. And obviously, you can buy them. I think they're about £8 each or something. Or you can get the Super Mega Bundle, which I will show off on PS3 as well. But I like the original game. I've got this digitally on PS3 as well. So, I would say, and the game is just about to load. I would say this is probably the. Okay, why do you even press pause? I would say this is probably my favourite way to play the original game. But obviously, I turned 40 last month, so I'm old. But there were numerous ports of this game. Now, there are ports on, and I've got the list up because I can't remember all the ports. There are ports of this game on, so PlayStation, which I've got in my hands. This is on Windows. That was the version I remember that had where you could play Chris Redfield there was an extras mode called Mercenaries. So he was available to play in that version of the game. I've never played that version of the game. Nintendo 64, which is a version I'd love to get, but it's also really sought after. I think looking at the prices, as you can see, you're talking quite a lot of cash. You're talking £200 or £150 upwards. That's a lot of cash for one game, and I would not recommend it because it's not the best way to play the game, if I'm honest. Particularly needing the N64 expansion pack, which I don't have on my N64 at this moment in time. I am planning to get it because I want to get a copy of Majora's Mask at some point. But I'm slowly making my way through games. I've just done Resident Evil 2, which is Resident Evil 2. What am I talking about? Metal Gear Solid Delta. I've just finished that. Even though it's a game I finished 20 years ago, it's a game I finished. So it's a good sort of sign forward. So that is, so there are very, very different versions of how you can play this. Now, another version you can play this is on the Dreamcast. Dreamcast might be the best version, which takes us on to the second topic for Resident Evil 2, the GameCube version. Now, this was very, very late, and I remember the original Resident Evil 2 came out in 1998. This is a port, and this is next generation. This would have been the same generation as PS2 and Xbox, or original Xbox. And this came out in 2003. So, yeah, it's on one disc in comparison to the PS1 version, which is on 2, because I think discs are about 650 meg, and I believe these are about 1.4 gigs, something like that. And the N64 version is why that's such a miracle, because I believe N64 cartridges were about 700 megs, and to condense that down, I think they had like a lower resolution to get all the cutscenes in and everything. But so yeah, it's the most interesting version. So it's a toss up between the Dreamcast version and the GameCube version. Some people say the Dreamcast version looks the best. It's very much similar debate to the PS2 Code Veronica and the GameCube Code Veronica and the obviously the original Dreamcast Code Veronica None. It was just Code Veronica. There wasn't no X in it, unlike the PS2 and the GameCube ports. There was a complaints about how dark the picture is in comparison. But I haven't got a Dreamcast. I'd like to get one. Same with the Saturn. But Saturn PAL games are just unbelievably expensive. That whole system in general, the titles on it, because of how rare they are now, to get hold of. And obviously disk drives, they tend to sort of, they start wearing out and stuff, as you saw with this earlier on where the disc started playing off of it. But yeah, so I think what we'll do is we'll do a quick run through this to the station, and we'll go for that. I've got it at 4:3 aspect ratio because I think playing this at full screen just looks kind of naff, if I'm honest. And let's try and raise it up a little bit. Okay, there we go. I do think since I've got this tripod, my videos have improved a little bit in terms of the quality. Nothing amazing, don't get me wrong. I only do this pretty much as a hobby. I did do a tour of the PlayStation 5 and 4 store. And now people don't like tank controls. Tank controls have never really bothered me. It's a little bit more difficult to get used to nowadays with obviously more modern controls and stuff. Mr. Kendo. Soon to be, well, non-existent. I do like Kendo's, the way they changed Kendo's story in the remake, though. That is kind of cool, what they did with him. And there's some differences with the intro on the GameCube version in comparison to the PlayStation versions. With like the title screen when the Resident Evil thing comes up. Oh, you can't cut through the cutscenes. I'm not used to that. It's kind of weird. This guy's got to be the least observant person in human history. The entire town has turned into a load of flesh-eating zombies, and he has not noticed. I mean, oh, and here's the thing. Most people know this, but if you don't pick up the bullets, you will encounter Brad Vickers. Which is kind of cool. But I'm going to pick up anyway. Because yeah, the RE1 and RE2 and 3 are tied in, so they take place at the same time. And Brad Vickers dies at the hands of Nemesis. No, I didn't want to do that. Quickly get the bullets. Get the bullets. So you actually see, if you don't pick up the bullets, you can actually see him underneath the. And let's get out of here. Let's get out of here. He actually, you see him under the underpass in the station, which is really, really cool. There's a lot of really cool Easter eggs. The GameCube version also, I believe, has. I think there's a file in somewhere in the station that shows, or it might be the Dreamcast version that shows Jill's basically fight for survival, because obviously RE2 and 3 take place essentially at the same time, except RE2 is something like it's either 12 hours or 24 hours before the events of Resident Evil 2, which is kind of cool. Look, we don't like you, go away. Obviously the remake, the zombies are a damn sight more challenging because they move and stuff, which can be really awkward. Especially when you've got like a good head aim on them and stuff, and then one of them decides to move. Oh, get off me. And you obviously don't get things like that in the remake. Oh, nice to meet you, sir. I need to actually play through this again probably at some point. I haven't played through Resident Evil 2, the original, in... It's got to be 20 years. At least 20 years. I think the last time I played through this properly would have been about 2004, 2005. And considering it's 2025, 26, sorry. No, I've got such fun. That to me looks like Scream. I know it isn't, but it generally looks like Scream. That post up there, but I've got such fond memories of these. As many times, nostalgia is a powerful drug. Sometimes too powerful, to be honest. It makes you remember things that weren't actually the case. Now I have got this on smoothing mode, which does make the game look a little bit better. But obviously, your GameCube version, your Dreamcast version, they are going to be the best versions for in terms of resolution and quality. They're going to look a lot better. And obviously, you don't necessarily have to use a scaler or an upscaler or anything. On this case, I don't really need to with the PS3, but it does help with some of the older generation stuff. But you look at just some of the background pre-rendered images; they are really, really cool. I spent many evenings after school playing this, and I was quite late on the Resident Evil train. I didn't really jump onto it till about 2000 with Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. That's where I started playing them through. I kind of played them backwards, so RE3. I never had the courage to play them. Oh, hello. I've actually just started doing a playthrough of Resident Evil 4, even though I've done technically one full playthrough and then one playthrough on Steam on hardcore difficulty, but I've just started playing it. I bought it on PS. I've been wanting things on physical discs since I've been doing the retro collecting. And, oh god. Woo! Get off me. And that's kind of what I've been doing, picking up games on physical discs and stuff. And it's really, it's I can't see the door. Fucking hell. It's really been quite a lot of fun. Obviously, check the games that actually are on physical disc. So as I say, if you go down here on the underpass, when you don't pick up the bullets, you'll encounter Brad Vickers in zombie form. As I said, he dies at the hands of Nemesis. And there's a lot of Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, the originals. There's so many cool Easter eggs, you know. There's a secret. I think there's a camera angle you can access here as well. Somewhere. Oh, hello. No one wants you to go away. I think I thought he was dead. You've got automatic. Oh god. You've got automatic aiming with RE3 as well, if I'm remembering correctly. There is a way to access a. Or is it a different version? I can't remember. There was a way, I'm sure there was, to access a hidden. Maybe I'm wrong. I thought there was, but apparently I can't remember how. But yeah, so obviously Brad Vickers dies here. This is all blocked off in Resident Evil 3 though, which is kind of weird. So you can't access any of these areas. But yes, that's basically Resident Evil 2. Hello. Yeah, I do like the remakes. I think the remakes have definitely got a place, and they are fantastic. But they're more modern, more accessible, but they are kind of diluted in terms of and the station layout's a little bit different. But I do love how iconic this version of the game. Now, this doesn't support analogs either. Maybe it's because I'm using a PS3 controller, but my analogs don't seem to work with this. But I believe this is actually a Chinese knockoff controller that I bought without realising it now. The other thing I didn't realise is that PS4 and PS5 pads, or PS4 pads, they work with PS3. They'll play PS3 games, but they don't seem to run PS1 games. which is kind of odd. But yeah, so Resident Evil 2. Iconic in many, many ways. And obviously, I will probably incorporate a bit of GameCube footage so you can see it for yourself.
Resident Evil 2. Freeze! But don't you worry, girlie. You'll be safe in here. I'm keeping a close eye on things.
hang in there. Are you the only officer left in the building?
Who are you?
Claire Redfield. I'm looking for my brother Chris.
We lost contact with him over 10 days ago. Chris, Jill Barry. Every last STARS team member has disappeared. We should have listened to them.
What happened?
About 2 months ago, there was this incident involving these zombie-like creatures in a mansion located in the outskirts of this city. Chris and the other STARS members discovered that Umbrella was behind everything, at the risk of their own lives. But no one believed them.
Are you okay?
Don't worry about me. Just rescue the survivors in the other rooms. Here, take this key card. You should be able to unlock the doors in the hall with this. Now go.
But...
Just go.
Okay. Just hang in there. I'll be back soon.
We will move on to the what I'd like to call the Prestar Resistance, which is the remake. And I've just got a basic copy of the remake, nothing particularly that special. It's just a standard edition of the game. I have it on Steam as well. As I said, there's no zapping system in this version, and so events in a game that happened with Leon happened at the exact same time as Claire, which makes absolutely no sense and it is bizarre to say the least. But the remakes, this is the easiest way to play Resident Evil 2 if you don't want to deal with tank controls and camera angles like with the original games. And it's very, very cheap. It's very, very accessible. What I do hate, no manuals. Absolutely. I know we're trying to save the planet and all that jazz, but a manual should be something that's part of a game experience. The old days of picking up a game and reading the manual in the car while you was with your parents or something, it's just it's just incredible. Such an experience you just don't get nowadays. Whoop. And the remake is a much scarier game. Don't get me wrong. And I will put some footage for it as well. But the voice acting is brilliant in the remakes. Quick game. I like Birkin's story is basically the same. Chief Iron's story I don't feel is as interesting with the remake. He's just an outright psychopath in the remake, whereas in the original game, you don't really know his allegiances lie. You know he's a bad dude, nonetheless, but you don't know this. Whereas in the remake, he's pretty much an out-and-out villain from the beginning. There are some differences, like with Sherry in the remake, you go. There's a new area called the orphanage you can go to, so that's kind of interesting. There's a lot of different a few different areas you can access and stuff, and there's like a survivors mode on this. I've not really played that much through, like with Hunk and a few different characters like Tofu. These are characters that go back to the original games with the mercenary modes, which was introduced in Resident Evil 3 Nemesis, if I remember correctly. But it's a good game. Resident Evil 3, as I said, the remake is, if it's on sale and it's about, I don't know, no more than say 15 quid, then maybe pick it up. But I haven't picked Resident Evil 3 up yet because I looked at my Steam list the other day and I've played it once, all the way through. I did start doing a more difficult playthrough of it, but it's just such a disappointing game. There's just very, very, very little in it is that great. It's just the Nemesis fights are just very bland, mostly, and it's just not scary. They're all scripted sequences. Whereas Mr. X in the remake, when you first encounter him, he's an absolute pain in the ass to contend with. Once you get used to it, you play a bit more, you know what he's going to do. Then he becomes less of an issue. But initially, when you first encounter him, this guy's just hella scary, man. He's just all on your shit. He always turns up when you least need him to turn up. He's just a nightmare. So yeah. But he's brilliant. So I don't know what the hell they did with Resident Evil 3 because they really did. They tied the two games together, but in a really janky way with Resident Evil 3. There's some bits in it I won't blow, but like how Marvin gets bit and all that sort of stuff, and how it's all linked with Brad Vickers and that. Although Brad Vickers gets a better send off, I would better. He has a more heroic send off in the remake than he does in the original, but I still prefer the original. But obviously this is the most accessible way to play Resident Evil 2 now. And it's on Series X, it's on PS4, Xbox One. It's actually on Switch as well, but on a I think they're all coming to Switch too, but it's a cloud streaming version of the game because obviously the Switch doesn't have the horsepower to run something like this. But generally, like, yeah, like, you know, they're just. The Resident Evil 2 is good whichever version you play. It's just I just have a special place for the original. A lot of people my age do, to be honest. There is just something about it that remake can't really replicate. But the zombies are far more challenging in the remake because they sway, they fall over, and a good piece of advice is do not shoot them in the head. Shoot them in the legs, and blow their legs out. Slows them down, gives you more time to move and sort of check behind you and stuff because they are more of a threat. Same with the Lickers. The Lickers are far more challenging in the remake, and you don't get stuck in that animation trap where it just keeps hitting you. You can't do anything about it, which happens in the remake, in the original, a lot in comparison to the remake. But yeah, generally excellent. I will just show off the super mega thing I was on about. This is just stuff I've downloaded on PSN because I have been told the clock battery. Once that clock battery goes in, why did I download that in PS3? I might be in trouble. I might not be able to resync my games that I've purchased and downloaded. So in the it's called the Super Bundle on PSN. So you get directors. Let me just zoom in a minute and lift this up a touch. So you get director's cut. What am I doing? Why don't I just do that? Make life easier for myself. You have to excuse the quality, it's a little bit. So you get director's cut in the Super Mega Bundle. I think it was about $17 or $18.99. You get Resident Evil 2, the one I've just obviously been playing. You get Resident Evil 3 Nemesis. You get Umbrella Chronicles, which was one of the Wii games, and you can play it with a PlayStation Move, I believe, as well. Dark Side Chronicles is another one that I think that one does Resident Evil Chronicles, does Resident Evil 2, and I think Resident Evil 3, and I think Code Veronica as well. And they're just co-op shooting, like light gun games. Umbrella Chronicles is Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 1. Oh no, I'm wrong. And I think it's actually Resident Evil 3, because I think that's Carlos there, I think. So yeah, so that does the co-op light gun games for those particular games. Then you got Resident Evil 5 Gold Edition. That's the reason I haven't picked up that on PS5 yet, because on PS3, it's the same. It has all the DLC, but obviously the next gen or the later gen versions of probably 60 frames a second, whereas that's probably locked to 30. Resident Evil 6, I've played once and I didn't like it, to be honest. I really didn't like the game. But to be honest, I need to stop looking at it as a Resident Evil game because I've been told by a lot of people it's quite a good co-op game, just not a great Resident Evil game because it's very much action focused with very little horror. But there is free campaigns in it, so it's probably well worth trying out for yourself. Operation Raccoon City is the biggest pile of shite I've ever played. As I've said before, the only good thing about that game is the what if scenarios and the storylines for Jill, Clay, because you can kill the main characters in it as well. I wouldn't waste your time with that game unless you really want to cause yourself an immense amount of pain. I would just watch the cutscenes on YouTube because the game is generally dreadful. The AI is awful. The character is like a different character. You play as an umbrella, sort of operative, and it's just boring as hell. The AI is brain dead. Your AI, you allies as well, and it's just shite. So, good luck if you want to play that one. RE4, that's obviously the PS2 version. RE4 is amazing. It's the most accessible Resident Evil game you'll ever play, by far, and the remake's probably even better, to be honest. That might be controversial to say that, but I do think the remake is really, really good. But Resident Evil 4 straddles the line between horror and action, and it balances it really, really well. The remake does it even better, and it's a very, very good game in general. It might be, as I said, the most accessible Resident Evil game ever made, to be honest, and it's fantastic. I did forget there's a Gamecom version of Resident Evil 2 as well, but it's in black and white and it looks kind of dreadful. So, but check it out if you're interested. Code Veronica X is an interesting one because Code Veronica originally came out on Dreamcast, and then the ports, the PS2, GameCube, and I think the PS3 version is a different version because the graphics are the character model is slightly different. And I think Steve Burnside's got a different hairstyle as well, but it's generally there's something they've done with the PS3 port that's different from the GameCube port, the PS2 port I've got, so I'm not sure exactly what they've done, but it looks different. And I've also bought that on Series X, I think, as well, my Xbox. But generally, I think that's all the Resident Evil games. Yeah, so that's pretty much Resident Evil 2.